Please, Professor Aziz, come here. Be comfortable.
Good morning. A warm welcome to all of you to this panel discussion on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's vision on Constitution and democracy on the occasion of 133rd birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the dignitaries here, especially to Professor Sukhdev Thorat, and who needs no introduction to this particular group. And suffice it to say that he is a chairperson of our Board of Governors. In addition to that, he is chairing a committee to prepare a new education policy for Karnataka, which is constituted by the government of Karnataka. So a warm welcome to you, sir. I also would like to welcome Professor Kancha Elaya. I came to know of Professor Kancha when I was a student, and after he wrote this book on why I'm not Hindu. And since then, I have been planning to meet him. And then this is today I happened to meet him. And then we have had half an hour discussion before coming to this one. And then I came to know why he's so widely liked and also dislikes. So that both the things happen. So a warm welcome to Isaac, sir. I know that you had come here and on a previous occasion, and very nice that we are able to have you with us today, and we would like to listen to you. And I also would like to welcome Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy. We are neighbors, but we don't regularly meet. That's how neighbors, I suppose. So good that today we are organizing this particular discussion. So you are here, and then a warm welcome to you. And then we also would like to listen to you on constitution and democracy. And then uh, I also would like to welcome other panelists, Professor Krishna Raj, Professor CESP, our institute, Professor Anil Kumar, CPICT, Isaac. Both are, would like to welcome you. And Mr. Sandeep Chopra is here or is online. And then warm welcome to you, Sandeep. And also Tirupati, and he is a student, and then he is one of the who has taken active interest in organizing this. I also would like to welcome the board members, Professor Deshpande, Professor Abdul Aziz, our registrar, Mr. Ashok Rao, faculty members, and Professor Jeevan Kumar. Nice to see you here, Jeevan, and also our student. And once again, warm welcome to all of you. Yeah. Those who are online, many of our colleagues are online, and also others who have come from outside. A warm welcome to all of you to Isaac and to this panel discussion. With these few words, now I would like to pass on the mic to Professor Thorat to conduct the proceedings because he will be chairing this panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
I coordinate. I coordinate of this one. Okay, welcome to all of you. This is a special function organized by the Institute of Social and Economic Change on the occasion of the 130th birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This is a panel discussion on a very important topic, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's vision on constitution and democracy. There is a note here circulated by the organizer. We have a distinguished panelist, Dr. Kancha Alia, Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy being a Vice Chancellor today, but he will also occupied Ambedkar chair at Columbia University. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on the occasion of his 100th birth anniversary, had set up a chair in legal studies. And he's the one who was the first professor. The chair still continues. There is some other professor. Then we have Krishna Raj, and then we have Professor Anil Kumar, and there is observer. There are a number of our board members. Quite a few of the participants are online. Well, thank you very much. And I don't want to make a comment in the beginning. I will make some observation at the end. So let's begin with the panel discussion. I invite Professor Kancha Elaya. This is, I think, about 11 o'clock now, and we can go 11:30. Yeah, we can go up to 12:20 or 12:30. Yeah, 15 to 20 minutes each, so that all the four panelists get enough time, and then there is a discussion. If there are answer questions for another 20 minutes or so, and I'll make some final remark. Professor Kancha, please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Thorat. And I, at the outset, thank Isaac and particularly Krishna Raj who have invited me to participate in this. You know, when we think of the Indian Constitution and democracy in the context of the present ongoing election. There are very deep fears and publicly expressed fears what would happen to Indian democracy if the election goes one way, what would happen to it if it goes the other way, and how to judge the election future, whether what will happen to the constitution and democracy if it goes in certain way or if it doesn't go in certain way. Now, one of the ways I thought was to look at the manifestos that both Congress and BJP have issued very recently. Now, whether the manifestos show their certain direction to commitment to their own understanding of democracy and the constitutional processes that Ambedkar put firmly in the draft of the constitution, though it is amended several times. Now, one major shift I see as an activist who has been working for social justice for quite some time, that for the first time, Congress has put out a manifesto which recognizes the social justice question through two fundamental issues. Though the manifesto has economic, what we call class issues in terms of welfare, but for the first time from 1952 to 2024, the Congress manifesto talked about caste census, which is a major contentious social justice question right from Ambedkar days in the Constituent Assembly. After 1931 census, the caste census question was set aside by the Dvija intellectuals. The Dvija intellectual force constitutes highly Western educated then, even now. It comes from 5 communities: the Brahmin, Vaishya or Baniya, Kayasthas, Khatris, and Kshatriyas. The remaining Shudras, whether it is Jat, Maratha, Patel, or Lingayat, Vaklinga, Reddy, Kamma, they had no clear expression about what will happen to democracy if caste census is taken again after we adopted the constitution. Even the OBC intellectuals, there are hardly any OBC intellectuals who engaged with the national questions of social justice. The idea of social justice was more expressively brought, though Ambedkar had his own vision of social justice after Mandal. And particularly in the West, after John Rawls wrote his thesis, Amartya Sen tried to, negotiate with some sort of an Indian understanding of social justice and European, but more, he also depended on European kind of understanding. He too wrote a book. Now, in the present Congress structure, there is a very serious opposition to that from the same force. Except Rahul Gandhi, who is pushing it, in public meetings, in private discourses, in two Padayatras. So the two things have gone into the manifesto. One, caste census, if we come to power at the national level. Second one, removal of 50% cap that Supreme Court imposed on reservation. Now, this will have certain impact on the electoral processes, in my view. Along with that, the economic issue that they put forward is that every unemployed will be given 1 lakh, and the apprenticeship placement in public and private sector units, which is there is no opening in private sector as of now. And then 1 lakh rupees for every one woman in a family of the BPL level. Now, this will shift the budget expenditure from the present form of expenditure of highway spending of infrastructure and contract economy. Because contract economy is the central for the present system. Now, BJP manifesto also came out recently. It did not change its course in any sense. It confines to the contract economic model and what they call Vikas Bharat development. In my view, does the Congress succeed in this attempt to influence the masses? What is its present national position? Now, one problem I see is, economists, I have not read any major book or thesis. Why in India, capital has developed only in Gujarat, Bombay, Western region, not in the Eastern India. Calcutta was the first colonial region, and Madras. If you see top 100 houses, monopoly houses, they are from Gujarat and Bombay region. Now, even if you see the software companies, though few of them are from here, Infosys Group, and of them only one is a Shudra from Tamil Nadu, and one major is a Muslim from again Bangalore region. My understanding is that the West Indian capital based in Gujarat and Bombay it has now fundamentally become a communal capital. Now, once capital becomes communal, its help to electoral process goes one way. And Congress has been getting from this capital, a large groups of them were financing it, but there was a dimension of communal process in that right from Mahatma Gandhi days. Now, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi's life, two then monopoly houses, whatever the level of the monopoly, Birlas and Goenkas were with Gandhi. And they were also operating in the religious domain. If you look at the economy of Birlas, he built several temples. And Gandhi himself used to have prayers around those temples, particularly Ram Temple. From that days to 2014, though the capital for the present monopoly form got formed during P.V. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh period, but their contribution to electoral economy at that time seems to be not very high. But now their contribution to electoral economy is massive. You can see that through the electoral bonds and the kind of contract they got. Now, the present Prime Minister is supported by two top companies, as Gandhi was supported by two top companies at that time, Ambani and Adani. And they are deeply entrenched into spiritual politics. Now, Western capital was conflicting all of them with church. The growth of Western, I know most of you must have read this Protestant ethic, Max Weber's, how the Western capital has grown, first in the initial stage through the Protestant mass mobilization move, but gradually the capital contested the religious control and became autonomous and secular. Therefore, capitalism growth and inventions of technology and science have been consistent in the secular domain, not in the spiritual domain. I have not known any great scientific discoveries coming from secular religious domain after Galileo kind of early days. Now, this capital, communalization of capital, and only particularly West Indian capital, Gujarat, and when did they got deeply communalized? In my view, they got deeply communalized from 2002 onwards. Now, for a national interest, I think there must be a serious debate to protect democracy, the need for de-spiritualization of capital, or to put it more stronger way, decommunalization of capital. I mean, look at the way the capitalists are visible in temple building. If it were to be in Islamic situation, if Muslim capitalists were to be there all around, they were to go and work around masjids, and then Jains or Buddhists or Christians around their spiritual institutions, democracy will not survive. And the present constitutional foundational theory is secular. If you read from the preamble onwards. So it is not, whether you support this party or that party. In fact, few days back, when BJP, a Congress manifesto was about to come, Anand Sharma wrote a very strong letter to Karge that Congress will not support identity politics. From Nehru days, Indira Gandhi days, Rajiv Gandhi days, we opposed identity politics. Why are you bringing caste into election manifesto? I wrote a serious article in Wire, and he called me, and he started saying that no, there is a misunderstanding. With identity politics have been part of India right from writing of Rigveda. Where was no identity politics in India? Even in Congress, Muslim identity question was there all through from 1947. And caste identity, I wrote one line in that which he took very serious objection. I said, your name Sharma is an identity for you, and that gives you a particular place. He said, Kanchaji, how can you, this birth is an accident in this caste. I said, Mr. Anand Sharma, your birth is a positive accident in that caste. My birth is a negative, historical, bad accident. We lost legs, ears, brain, and you have everything intact. So, but you are using it. If you are not for identity politics, so that is the reason why the shepherd I had to bring in. I should bring in my identity onto the table. And that is seen as negative. That is seen as anti-Indian. That is seen as anti-national. So this is the problem. If we want to protect Ambedkar Constitution, we have to serious Indian economists, center like this, must work on what is happening to capital in terms of spiritualization and communalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kancha Alaya. We have three more speakers. I have some suggestion for them. The election code is in operation. It will be better that we avoid discussion on parties and elections and the related aspect. Please keep that in mind. Shri Krishna, please.
Good morning, and can I begin by first thanking Professor Krishnaraj for the invitation to be here, and Professor Rajshekhar for organizing this event on the 133rd birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. There are many ways that we can discuss and engage with Ambedkarite thought and practice, and my sense what might be useful for an occasion like this is to think about the last year, where we have had the benefit of two remarkable books on Ambedkar. One by Scott Stroud called The Evolution of Pragmatism in India, which looks at Dewey, Ambedkar, and the evolution of ideas across two very different jurisdictions with remarkable linkages. And the second by Ashok Gopal called Apart Apart, which to my mind brings together bilingual materials and chronology in a way that I simply have not read. And I think I have read almost every bit of the corpus, Ambedkar corpus, available in the English language. And that the book does this in a remarkably fresh and new way. And I'm going to base my reflections on the topic, drawing on these new materials. It gives us an occasion to think about what we might have always assumed, and at least produce some fresh thinking on these topics. I want to begin, though, with what Professor Kancha Ilaya Shepherd closed with, which is, where is the challenge for Indian democracy and constitutionalism? And I'm going to pose this challenge in a very different way than what Professor Kancha Ilaya did. There has been a thesis for some time in Indian political science that constitutionalism and democracy in India are intrinsically in tension. In other words, if we deepen democracy, we will erase constitutionalism. If we deepen constitutionalism, it will cut back on democracy. That the two ideas are in some sense, at least in the political context and location in the subcontinent, in India, in tension, intrinsically in tension. That we can't do both. We can't have a vibrant and very active democracy and a strong constitution. Now, this idea has had several challenges. The 1975 emergency and the Keshavananda Bharati case in 1973 is an example of an uneasy reconciliation. The ostensible motivation at that point was the then Prime Minister's view that to pursue an agenda of social transformation, radical amendment was necessary. As it turned out, the court took a different view of the question. And the court thought that what it was doing was restoring some sense of balance between the forces of political and social transformation and constitutional maintenance. I think today, in 2024, we are contemplating a similar kind of challenge. We are thinking about the place of constitutionalism and its relationship with democracy, but in very different political context. The political context has changed, but the type of problem remains the same. And here, I want to draw on a few ideas and some that Professor Thorat has also written on previously, but I'll try and present them at least in a novel and interesting way. Dr. Ambedkar thought about this question at great length. As the Ashok Gopal book illustrates very keenly, Ambedkar always positioned himself as a reluctant politician. He thought that the major tasks of transformation in this country was social. He thought that his primary energies should be dedicated to building social transformation movements that change both material politics and change minds, both. And his intuition there was that politics, whether that be of the provincial assemblies or later of post-independence India, may or may not help, but social movements and social transformation comes first. In the context of the constitution and constitution making, this problem was writ large in Indian constitution making. Now, many people read Dr. Ambedkar's closing speech in October, November of 1949 as an example of how he thought about the problem. It is worth returning to that speech. I'm not going to quote. Most people in this audience know these materials. But what was the idea there? The idea was to explore the tension that if we institutionalize one person, one vote, strong political democracy, it would actually be a conservative and retrogressive move in India. And Ambedkar anticipates and states as much. He says, strong one person, one vote. If we reduce democracy to the idea of political preference aggregation, simple vote casting, then India will go backwards in his estimation. And he thought that no constitution should be just the institutionalization of a thin political democracy. Then what should it do? And to this, he suggested that a precursor, a foundation to the institutionalization of political democracy in India was the institutionalization and the transformation of an economic and social democracy. Now, this idea is captured in the constitutional frame. Part 4 of the Constitution, Directive Principles of State Policy, capture many of the core social and economic transformation, anti-hierarchy ideas already in writing, and it's there in the constitutional frame. Some parties' manifestos draw on these documents, but by and large, the Indian political project, most parties historically do not treat Part 4 as the reservoir or the place from where political values need to be drawn. That idea is very weak across all parties. And so Ambedkar's view that he stated quite clearly in 1949 and thereafter was that there is one way of reconciling the tension between political democracy and the constitution, which is to embed the constitution with a core of constitutional values that were non-negotiable. And by placing it there was a feat of constitutional imagination, but also an unlikely view on political imagination, because in most countries around the world, political experience and history suggests that social revolutions occur before you make the constitution, not after you make the constitution. Once you make the constitution, as the American founders say, you have domesticated political revolution. No political revolution can occur because constitutions domesticate politics. But the view that we took in the Indian Constitution that both were possible, that we can institutionalize political democracy and make social and economic revolution possible. And that view is embedded in Part 4 of the Constitution. Ambedkar has a non-constitutional position, which I think, once again, the two books that I'm referring to really trace out I think in remarkably new ways, both Ashok Gopal, but I'm going to now focus on the Stroud book. And the Stroud book focuses on a strain of thinking that links Dewey, Buddhism, and the idea that the problem of transformation is not just social. It is personal, individual, and not just a transformation of Dalit and Bahujan consciousness, but of national consciousness on the caste question. This transformation and the relationship between caste and mind is something that Ambedkar has written about in his corpus of work, thinking about Buddhism and its effects on individual consciousness. But what is striking about this third dimension, that is, I'm just going to call this, they don't call this, by the way, neither do Stroud nor do Ashok Gopal call this a sort of interiority problem. What do we do with who we are, the kinds of people that we are? How do we transform that? For Ambedkar, while he was not overtly spiritual about Buddhism as a religion, he saw Buddhism as a social transformative project. He did pay attention to this question of how do you change minds and how do you change the interiority of persons. But this idea is nowhere in the Constitution. The only reference that one can make is a tangential one. We can say that the placing of fraternity in the preamble carries the germ of this idea, that fraternity is both social practice and individual consciousness, which is that if we engage in a set of practices, it changes minds and temperaments, right? Changes who we are as people. Barring this reference, the reference to fraternity, this project, and I come back to the question of spirituality, is not in the Constitution. Today, in contemporary India in 2024, we have as the major currency of politics the idea of who we are as persons, a discourse of interiority, of beliefs, of spiritual beliefs, sometimes religious beliefs, as the primary vectors and drivers of politics, of political democracy. Yet, while Dr. Ambedkar anticipated that in his work on Buddhism and its relevance to Indian society, this was nowhere in the constitutional project. It was not a dominant part. Now, I've already said that the Indian Constitution is really radical because it embraces a social and economic transformation project. Then imagine how much more radical it would have been if it also embraced a spiritual interiority project. But our constitution makers were not that brave and not that imaginative. They kept that out. And frankly, there was no precedent in political life for a constitution to anticipate this interior life. So where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves in a situation where the battlegrounds of politics are being fought in the minds and hearts of people. Materiality, that is the projects of social and economic transformation, take a second seat. They are not the most important drivers and vectors of politics. Whereas our beliefs and our preferences, spiritual, religious, and otherwise, can settle matters in political terms. This kind of predicament poses a completely different new challenge to this tension between constitutionalism and democracy. And I can say, though I wear a constitutional law professor hat on most days of the week, that the Constitution has very little to offer to this project. If fraternity as an idea, as some people argue, capacious enough that it will change our hearts and minds, then we can all embrace the ideas of fraternity as some kind of transformative internal personal experience. But on our current evidence, fraternity is too weak a value when placed against our current, the other political projects of our day. And so my intuition on this 133rd anniversary is that we have to seriously think about what is the embrace of Buddhism mean as a political project, not as a social project. What does it mean as a political project? What does it mean for the way we reconcile the intrinsic tension that heightened political democracy in India with a one person, one vote emphasis, very thin conception of democracy, is going to place constant pressure on all the other values that we have placed in the Constitution and that Ambedkar certainly wanted to see take place in the Indian subcontinent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shri Krishna Swami. Professor Krishna Raj, please.
Thank you, Professor Thorat, the chairman, and also fellow panelists, and also my friends and faculty and students. I am not a expert in constitution and also democracy, and please forgive me if I go wrong when I make some observations on the constitution and democracy. Recently, the first time we are conducting this birth anniversary celebrations of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Institute as an official program. I congratulate both the chairperson and also the director for having organized this program here.
Yeah, Dr. Krishna Raj took the initiative. We should appreciate his effort.
So when on 14th we had a small celebration in the ISEC, but after that we could not have it. We thought of having it on some other day. Now it has happened today. Recently, I was invited to Bharat Electronics Limited for delivering a lecture as a invited special guest, where I told the BL, the MD, Managing Director, Chief Managing, the CMD, and other officials, they also organized this program officially through Human Resource Department. They have a very huge campus there. So why I am referring this BL is that BL has helped to secure both constitution and democracy in India through electronic voting machine they produced. Otherwise, there were several problems earlier before this electronic voting machine was introduced. There was a ballot voting and booth capturing was common throughout the India, and also manipulation of election results and everything was taking place. So the whole credit goes to BL for securing this democratic procedure to be followed during the excising franchise in the coming days and also earlier. But there are also some controversial statements the parties make, but overall, the electronic voting machines have been very fair, and also everyone has accepted because of VVPAT. That is, there is a VVPAT where when you vote and the candidates for whom you have voted will be displayed there itself. Therefore, the accuracy has been very high. And also the various other countries have appreciated this electronic voting machine. I understood that there are also demand for this voting machine, but the government has a reservation to export them to other countries. So when I say this, why democracy has and constitution have been secured through these technological equipments or technology which has helped the country to secure democratic values. At the same time, some developments that took place, especially if you look at the Chandigarh mayor elections,
there was a manipulations, and ultimately the Supreme Court has to intervene, and the other candidate was replaced. And other thing is that when you look at the after the elections, the political parties realignment takes place. So many people join other parties, they form the government through legal or illegal ways. That is also dent on the democratic values. Uh, in this way, the nature of democracy we have. Therefore, there was a report by Netherlands University. So, Indian democracy, even though being appreciated as one of the largest democracy in the world, but it is neither an autocratic or nor a full or pure democracy. It is in between. In this context, I want to draw the message or vision given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar about how to safeguard both constitution as well as democracy. Yes, you know that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has struggled a lot to get education. Then he was studying in Columbia University, and Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy was heading that one of the chairs established by Government of India in Columbia University. Later, he moved to London School of Economics. These degrees, these foreign studies, have helped him to understand the whole world and also Indian discriminatory society at large. And when he came back, he fought for the justice for the downtrodden through various committees. Pune Pact was there, and also whereas there were several roundtable conferences were held, and he deliberated, discussed the Indian politics and also the societal issues. More on the largely he has conquered to safeguard the interest of the downtrodden. So when he became the drafting committee chairperson of the Indian Constitution, so his contribution was well recognized, and this constitution is accepted. And by and large, this constitution has secured the India as one country. And even though we have completed 75 years here, so we are living together. That is the success of Indian constitution and also democracy, even though there are lots of issues with respect to democracies. So we can understand Dr. Ambedkar's contribution as an educationist in the first part, and second part as a writing a constitution in the second part, and third part as implementing these policies to safeguard the interest of the people. In this regard, I want to draw contrast between what constitution states and what democracy in practice it is working. Through various articles, you know that Article 14, it says that equality before law. Article 15, prohibition of discrimination. And Article 16, equality of opportunities. And 17, abolition of untouchability. And Article 18, right to freedom and all those things. So if you ask questions on whether we have all these freedoms, all these rights have been ensured, then we can't say affirmatively yes. Still, if you look at the socio-economic conditions of the various downtrodden, even including OBC, women, children, and also SC, STs. So economic inequality and opportunities have not been ensured by the Indian democracy, even though Constitution aspires for it. Economic inequality is one of the worst in terms of opportunities, especially after 1991, as Kanchaila has mentioned, the capitalism, the privatization has taken over the Indian various resources, including natural resources and other resources. They are not being equally distributed among the various sections of the community. So that has resulted in rise of unemployment, rise of poverty, And also, if you look at human development indices, so that clearly shows that the constitutional aspirations have not been fulfilled so far, even though we have completed 75 years of Indian Constitution. And and also, if you look at the three important values we have, including the freedom, equality, and also fraternity. The freedom to express, it is there. However, the freedom to express in terms of voting, it is also there. But the freedom has been curtailed through malpractices such as providing money or using the money, enticing the people to vote for particular party is also one of the failures of our Indian democracy. Okay, if money is given to the voters by all the parties and the voters will take the decision to vote getting money by all the parties, that is fine. If it is asked vote in terms of religion, in terms of caste, in terms of other practices, that is completely, that is also wrong. The offering money is also wrong, but also asking the people to vote on the basis of some caste politics, that is also wrong. That may not go in favor of good democracy or constitution. That is one idea. The other thing is that after the elections, the realignment of political parties for the uh, power, that is also one of the dent on the democratic values in India. Therefore, recently these reports, Pew reports have come, and universities have ranked the India's democracy as low as possible because of undermining the democratic values in India. So this has affected the economic development of the country by and large. If you look at the electoral bonds and how the parties have received money from the loss-making companies, that clearly shows that the political parties are encouraging the capitalists to make money, and also through malpractices. Therefore, we economists call them as a crony capitalist. So they gain because of political interference or political alignments. This has curtailed the rights to access to very basic resources like housing, water, sanitation, food, clothing, and also other human developmental requirements that made country so poor even today. Even though the government of India aspires to achieve India as a developed country by 2047, this cannot be achieved because of all this glaring income inequality and also unemployment and assetlessness, etc. Therefore, certainly the governments have to change their values with respect to economic policies and democratic practices they follow. And therefore, the voters should also they change their minds, because the democracy should start in our home rather than start in Delhi or state governments. When we give freedom, equality, and fraternity in home, then it will pass on to the national level or state level or national level. This is how values should change. Otherwise, the people at the helm of affairs, they may not follow the constitutional values of freedom, equality, and fraternity at the practice. So I stop here, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Krishnaraj. Now our last panelist is Professor Anil Kumar. Professor Anil Kumar, please.
Good afternoon, sir, and it's an honor for me to speak on the 133rd birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And I thank Professor Thorat, Dr. Kishan and Director Professor Rajshekhar and fellow panelists. I would like to just concentrate on four things. One is a life of contradictions. Dr. Ambedkar, in his speech on the grammar of anarchy, given one day before the adoption of the Constitution, spoke on the life of contradictions that we are going to enter once we adopt the Constitution. That we will have one man, one vote, one vote, one value, but in society and economy will be very unequal. The point, however, is that these inequalities have been intensified ever since. And therefore, the contradictions that Ambedkar spoke of have intensified between political democracy and social and economic situation. That's the first point I would like to make. The second point is that the three principles, liberty, equality, and fraternity, are taken from the French Revolution. And they are, in a way, alien to Indian society. I do not mean to say that they should be alien, but they were taken from world history and historical revolutions. And these points, these aspects, for a society that has not seen a revolution, have been entirely new, and they continue to be new, unfortunately. So the point is this, that while we have a formal democracy, the social democracy that Ambedkar spoke of remains an illusion. It remains difficult to achieve, and we only remain a formal democracy. The second point, why we do not have social democracy, is the second aspect of caste and graded inequality that Ambedkar spoke of. Now, I would like to say that democracy over time, the functioning of democracy over time, has strengthened graded inequality in spite of all the affirmative action, etc., or sometimes because of affirmative action. This may be a somewhat provocative statement, but I would like to say it anyway, because caste and graded inequality have been a great impediment before democracy. They're not conducive to democracy, because graded inequality means that it's not only the upper caste, the contradiction between the upper caste and the lower caste, but also the middle caste and lower caste. That is a problem. It's a sedimented system in which, to give one example, Marathas and Kamas are no great friends of Dalits. I have to say very, very clearly. There are many instances where in Tamil Nadu, the backward castes go against Dalits. So it's very clear that the graded inequality comes in the way of realization of Ambedkar's dreams. Now, therefore, what I'm trying to say is that the social democracy, which Dr. Ambedkar spoke of, remains very, very far-fetched today. And this I would like to, in a contrast to Professor Riley, I would like to say this, that it's the Dvijas alone who are, I'm not defending Dvijas. There is a lot of, in fact, negative feelings among the Dvijas about the rise of the backward caste as well as the Dalits. In fact, I feel that, but that's not the only point. The backward castes also, the OBCs also oppress the Dalits in equal sense, or if not more. And today's democratic dilemma is this: that how do we democratize society as Ambedkar wanted? Political democracy has taken roots, but social democracy has not. And that is my second point. And therefore, it is very, very illuminating to read the speech of Ambedkar on the grammar of anarchy given on 25th of November 1949, and one day before the adoption of the Constitution and preamble. And on the last point that I would like, last but one point that I would like to say is that democracy and democratic values are given to the new generation of people and to economies as a free gift. I mean to say, the younger generation and the generation which is born after the implementation of the Constitution, the generation X, or you call it generation before that, does not know the struggles with which the Constitution was adopted. And therefore, there's a lot of what Ambedkar called indifferentism among the youth of the constitutional values and the values that Ambedkar spoke of. Today, as I teach in the university or I lecture in our institute, I find students, some of them are very open to these ideas, but I find also younger generation very new to these ideas. They have to be introduced. As Ambedkar speaks of, every generation is a new nation. So the new nation has to be introduced the fundamental values of the Constitution. So as educators, we also have that responsibility. So this is the third point I would like to say in practice that we have. And therefore, we have entered a life of contradictions on 26 November 1949. And these contradictions have intensified ever since. And second point is that graded inequality and social democracy remain very difficult to be achieved anymore. And the last point that I would like to say is that if you read that article quite clearly, it says that Ambedkar identifies two forces that are against the Constitution, the communists and the socialists. The communists, because they believe only in instrumental value of democracy and not the intrinsic value of democracy. They would like to use democracy, but they would like to transcend democracy, bourgeois democracy. And socialists because they want fundamental rights, but not other aspects of constitution. So I think this problem, and Ambedkar also warns against violent methods of transforming society and polity and turning constitution upside down by violent methods, and the importance of following constitutional methods and playing by the rule book, in fact. So what I'm trying to say is that it is the same forces which are also critical of Ambedkar. Ambedkar is not only being criticized from the right, but also from the left. Let's be aware of that. So, from the point of view of all four things, in terms of defending social democracy, in terms of defending democracy and against indifferentism, and in defense of democracy and Ambedkar's ideas against those who preach violent revolution. We need to celebrate Ambedkar's thought, and this is an apt occasion and to celebrate his thought. And on his 133rd birth anniversary, I'm happy to be here, and I thank Professor Thorat, Professor Krishnaraj, and Director Professor Rajshekhar, and everyone else here for having given me this opportunity, and an honor to speak. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I thank the speaker for confining the timing and so that some time is left for discussion and the comment by the chairperson. I think what I will do is that I'll make my comments, some observation, and then we open up for the speak. Okay. Oh, please be brief. Yeah, sorry. Because he's the observer.
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I've observed it, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And I'll like stick to the time. And it was assigned to me. That's why I'm taking this. And thank you so much. So just going with the brief idea and how we understanding Ambedkar's vision on constitution and democracy. And we all are understanding and interpreting Ambedkar from last many years, and we are trying to decode him every day with the thoughts and thought processes he was having, like with the things. So when we look at Ambedkar in the Constitutional Assembly and his thought process at that point of time, we need to understand that he was not just in the process, he was actually the process, and everything was working around him. and everything was operational around him. He was the one who was experiencing things, and obviously from the sides of the opposition groups and whatnot. And he was exploring himself as a politician. Or he was a trained academician, obviously, but he was exploring himself as a politician, and he was continuously expressing himself as a person coming from a particular section of the society. And this was prerequisitely taken up by the idea of the assertion which he was having. He was trying to convey himself in a way ki we will like we as a section of the society, we are looking forward for some or the other kind of development for the those sections. At the same time, he was counterbalancing with other groups, like whatever be the arguments which are raised by the other sections and other groups, he was trying to counterbalance all those things. And when we look at, like, he was actually playing multiple roles at that point of time. And like when we look at him, is like when we look at Ambedkar's participation and his vision, then we need to first like look at that how a vision of a person is developed. He came out with certain experiences, and he was like convinced with the fact that the constitution which this country was having earlier was not having certain sections for certain aspects, and it was not covering those components. And those were that earlier constitution, which was the Manusmriti, was anti-justice, and it was anti-equality. It was not actually promoting the idea of social welfare. It was anti-freedom, and it was anti-liberty, and all those aspects attached with that. When he was like reading all the like amendments, and he was taking up the all the amendments, like we need to also understand like uh, like Ambedkar as a person present in the Constituent Assembly, he was very practically possessive about the constitution. Why he was practically possessive? Because he was making sure that every single aspect attached with the marginalized section should be taken up seriously, and so that the justice should be given to them. At the same time, when we look at like his flow of expressions from his first speech in the parliament, which was about the constitution resolutions, and he was talking about the republic and the sovereignty of the state and the union and the like power, giving power to the center. And he was talking about, and in this he was not actually talking about a single section. He was very concerned, and he was talking about all. He was talking about everyone. And flowing from this, like the last speech of Baba Sahib in the Constitution Assembly, in which he was very deliberately, he said that like it doesn't matter that what kind of constitution we are going to make. In the end, it's the implementers who will, how they will use it and how they will. Recently, we all came with uh, a very beautiful piece of text is introduced among us. Advocate Anurag Bhaskar came with a book, The Four-Sighted Ambedkar, and published by Penguin. And chapter 13, 14, 16, 19, they're brilliantly and beautifully he articulated how Ambedkar was understanding the whole concept of constitution and democracy, and how he is trying to depict every single aspect in attachment with that concept. He is at the same time, what he was trying to construct, he was very optimistic and hopeful that in the end we will create a constitution which will in the end create unity in the country, which means that he will literally try to unite the country through this document, through this constitution. And at the same time, like uh, his skepticism towards the constitution and the people who were implementers was equally visible that point of time. In this book, Nural Bhaskar has clearly stated and like argumented that when he said that I will be the first person to burn the constitution, he was not meaning that he was literally wanted to burn the constitution. He was actually after the people who were the implementers, and who were not actually who were actually anti justice at that point of time. He was pro for the like giving powers to the governors of the state, so that the linguistic states the people in the linguistic states and the marginal sections on the states can get justice. At the same time, when we go in the flow and his idea of justice, like in his idea of democracy, there we have different traces and phases in which he said. And first, he said that we need to need not to learn democracy from outside. Like we had our Buddhist parliaments and sanghas in ancient times, and we are taking forward that idea. But Nanak Chand Ratu, in his collected works, he's talking about two important incidents where Ambedkar seriously taken up about the idea of democracy and what he was actually thinking about it. First was 27th of October 1951. He was in Jalandhar, and it was a political scientist parliament, and DAV college it was. And he said that democracy is a phenomena is down to be felt if the intention of the ruling party is, or the attitude of the ruling party in power is not good. So the people who are in power, if they are using the like overpowering things and they are not using the power in a good manner, then we can think and we can understand that a democracy will come to a state of failure. At the same time, he was very serious about the idea of maintaining and keeping a healthy opposition in a democracy. That if a healthy opposition, a good opposition is not there, then we can't actually expect a democracy should be established. The second incident is about May 20, 1956, when he was talking to talking on Voice of America, and he was saying that democracy and parliamentary form of government are two different things. They are not same. And democracy is something which is much, much, much greater than the idea of government. And at this point of time, he was actually showing his skepticism towards the single party system as well. He was saying that we need to have more and more parties so that we can represent people from other segments also. So in his ideas, democracy is a primary mode of association of people. And in India, when we look at the Indian nation state, then like recently, like Suraj Angade also stated that India is a caste nation. And here, social association of people, their mobility, their social endosmosis and intercourses are very much prohibited. And people are not connected to each other in that manner. So, in his opinion, in India, democracy will not be established till the time we are not able to make a mobile society, make a society which is caste free. Then, till then, we can't expect the society to be democratic. At the same time, he was talking about the eradication of the caste system in the country, and obviously, like Anil sir just said, that's the social democracy. He was talking about the social democracy before the political democracy, which is coming. In the end, I'm taking the reference from the BBC interview 1955. He said that people who are actually coming to the electoral parts, they are voting for a particular party, and they are not actually knowing their candidates, and they are just looking at a symbol and they are voting for a symbol. So we need to take the idea of democracy to the grassroots so that each and every individual will get to know that how this whole concept of democracy works, not just as a matter of idea but in practice as well. And I'm like taking a leave here. I don't want to waste time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It was interesting. Sorry that I forget. I think you listened to a very insightful 5 presentation where you get different aspects and views of Dr. Ambedkar on constitution and democracy. I don't want to summarize them, but I will just reflect on this particular topic, that is Ambedkar's vision of constitution and democracy. I think it's a difficult theme. About 6 months before, the Brandeis University, USA, had organized a conference on caste, law, and social justice. 2-day conference, and Chief Justice of India was invited. And he did came because this university is in Boston, and Chief Justice of India was a student of Harvard University. He did his PhD from there. So he combined couple of program and he came and he gave a very wonderful keynote address in this conference. A large number of participants participated. The Brandeis University brings out a journal called Caste Online. And they also have this conference. Now they are going to bring out a special issue of Caste Online. They will publish the article by Chief Justice of India, and there are 4 people who have given the comments. Manoj Mata, am I pronouncing correctly? Manoj Mita is one who has given comment. Disha Wadekar, who is at Columbia University at the moment, but she is a lawyer in Supreme Court. Rakesh Sampath, who is a professor of philosophy. And I was asked to give a comment on the Chief Justice lectures. Now, I am not a student of Constitution or democracy, but I have been reading Ambedkar's thoughts on Constitution and democracy for quite some time. Now, the comment that I gave, I have developed particular perspective on Ambedkar's roles, Ambedkar's views on Constitution and democracy. So, the major theme of the Chief Justice of India was the Ambedkar's emancipatory constitutionalism. Ambedkar's constitutionalism that is transformatory and constitutionalism which brings social change. And he explained that by interpreting the 1950 constitutions. So you could see the discussion on first, what are the elements in the Indian Constitution which amounts to emancipatory transformation or which encourage social change or transformation? What are those elements in Indian Constitution of 1950? And second, what is Ambedkar's contribution in bringing those into Indian Constitution? So that is the first aspect that he has discussed. And I have interpreted it the way I understood it. But my proposition is the following. That yes, Ambedkar played a very significant role and very important role in the making of the Constitution, so much so that he is called the architect of constitutions, and different words have been used for him, and there is no limit for that appreciation. And there are a large number of books on the role of Ambedkar in constitution making, 1950 constitution making. But if one has to understand Ambedkar's evolution of thoughts on constitution, you have to begin with 1990. When he returned back from England, the first memorandum that he submitted to the South Bureau Commission, that memorandum contained certain element of constitution. What is his view? I am not going into that detail. 10 years after, in 1930, when the Simon Commission again came for reform of constitution, he again gave a memorandum. And then this Simon Commission was followed by a roundtable conference, 3 roundtable conference in London, where he played a very significant role in making of 1935 constitution, British constitution. And I think that there where exactly the Patel and Gandhi and others saw the scholarship of Dr. Ambedkar. And that's the reason why he was made a member of the drafting committee and the chairman of the drafting committee. And then, of course, after 1935, straight down to the Constitutional Assembly, he helped. So all one has to look at, we have to study, but I am not going to do that. Other than the role of Ambedkar in the Constitutional Assembly, it is Dr. Ambedkar has not written on Constitution. He was asked to write a book, and he said, what is to be written about Constitution? It is as clear as that. But I think, as one of our students has mentioned, there are 3 important sources and lectures which are important. One is, of course, the 25th November 1949 last lecture, Thanksgiving ceremony, where he issued warnings, precautions, and also prediction, which have come true today. Then in a DAV college, Jalandhar, he gave a lecture, Prospect of Success of Democracy in India. And he laid down certain conditions, prospects. Then the last lecture he gave was in the law library in Pune, where he was invited to give, and the title itself is Condition for Success of Democracy. And he laid down those conditions. I think that together gives you the idea of Dr. Ambedkar's writing. So I am not going into that, but the important point that I will do is the following. That what is the role of Ambedkar's constitution, role in bringing the emancipatory element in the Indian Constitution? But before we do that, we must understand what is constitutionalism and what is constitution and what does constitution contain. Now, our entire constitution, exception apart, is based on British constitution, word by word, and lot many things. Now, what does the British constitution contain? The British constitution contained two aspects. One, it laid down the fundamental rights of citizens. Liberty, equality, liberty. We have added fraternity, and also at the end, we have added national integration in the preamble. So the Constitution laid down the fundamental right. All his first articles are liberty, equality, freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of profession, freedom, all kind of freedoms, and fraternity is laid down. So you have the list of fundamental rights which the state will protect, or the citizen will be protected on coercion from the state on their fundamental right. So I am not going to go into that detail, but fundamental right, laying down the fundamental right is the first part of the Constitution. The second part of Constitution is the political structure. And that political structure is what? You have a legislature, you have the executive, and you have judiciary. The legislature is the people elected by the government on their behalf, and they work for the people. That is why Lincoln's definition is important. The democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. So in democracy, democracy is their own. They elect their representative, they work for the people, and they do policies for the people. So, but legislation pass the law. The executive decisions are taken by executive, the cabinet, and the bureaucracy. So that is the second part of the political structure. And third part is, of course, judiciary, which is independent, which is an eyewash on the executive as well as legislature. So this is broad. There can be additional provision. Broadly, the British type of constitution has these two components. In any constitution, there are so many additional things. Now, what is our constitution? And how Ambedkar sort of modify it and make it a emancipatory, or which allow the social transformation to be possible. I think Chandrachud has very rightly discussed, and Dr. Ambedkar has also written on this. I will give the quotations, I will give the references. The Ambedkar's contribution is that Ambedkar, in the very first meeting, remember well, what should be the goal of Constitution? What should be the objective of Constitution? Nehru Committee was set up, Jawaharlal Nehru Committee. And that was the first discussion in the Constitutional Assembly, what should be the objective. And Nehru committees, in fact, laid down the foundation and argued that our goal should be equality, liberty, social justice. Our constitution should be framed in a manner such that it ensure equality, it ensure liberty, it ensure freedom to the people. Ambedkar commented on it. And you can see the difference of Ambedkar with Nehru. And Ambedkar commented that it is a good resolution, this is a good objective, but giving right in the Constitution, fundamental right, is not enough. That is a first step. You have to also give a remedies. And here comes the additional point of Dr. Ambedkar. That Constitution should also include remedies and not only let down fundamental right, the way the British Constitution does. And then he went a step by. He said, unless you have an economic equality and social equality, how can you have a social justice? And then again, he went a step ahead. Unless you have a socialistic economy, nationalization of land, nationalization of industry, how can you have an economic justice and social justice? But Ambedkar says, I leave the thing there and I go ahead. Ambedkar could have resigned, but he did not do. Sudhir Krishna Swami has rightly pointed out, you must read that book. Scott has brought out a book, Ambedkar Pragmatism. Ambedkar Pragmatism was influenced by John Dewey when he was in Columbia University. Ambedkar was pragmatic. Ambedkar was the only member, or possibly two members in the Constitutional Assembly on behalf of his political party, Scheduled Caste Federation. So he was nowhere. And Ambedkar therefore pragmatized and compromised. And he said that, okay, if you don't accept this, my idea of constitutionalism, we go forward and I'll be a part of it. But that is the basic idea of Dr. Ambedkar, where there are seeds of reformatory and emancipatory constitutionalism. What is that? That we should have fundamental right, but at the same time, we should have remedies. Dr. Ambedkar brought both fundamental rights in the Constitution, in a very elaborated manner, but also brought remedies, which was not the intention of the Constitutional Assembly or for that matter, Nehru. It is Dr. Ambedkar who brought it. What are those elements of social change and transformation that he brought in the Constitution? First, he brought he brought the principle of equality before law, equal opportunity, and added non-discrimination. There was no need of mentioning non-discrimination. He mentioned non-discrimination. Discrimination associated with caste, gender, race, color, origin is debarred. But Ambedkar went ahead. Untouchability was banned and made a subject for punishment. In fundamental right, you must understand that. This was the Ambedkar's contribution, that untouchability means caste. So, but basically not all caste, not all aspect of caste, but untouchability banning in the fundamental right, which means he has suggested the legal remedies and considered it as an offense. And in 1955, then the law was passed, Untouchability Offence Act. That was a remedy. Ambedkar went a step ahead for social transformation. This is the first thing. Second thing is entire reservation policy, which came in the Constitution. Now, this is an addition of Dr. Ambedkar, not of the others. And reservation in job, reservation in legislature, reservation in job, reservation in education institution, and in housing, even right to minority to set up their educational institution. This all is an agenda for social transformation. This was not the original idea. This is Dr. Ambedkar brought it, which began in 1990, which began in Roundtable Conference, and later on British refused to accept it. But it is he who brought it. This is an emancipatory constitutionalism which Dr. Ambedkar brought in the Indian constitutions as such. And that is what we must recognize, because he has given warning which has come successful. I'll refer to that. Now, the third, I think, which is very important aspect that he brought, which is not again a part of the British type of constitution, is the one which Sudhir Krishna has referred to, and that is directive principle. Directive principle, why directive? He has brought a directive principle, I'll tell you later, but directive principle is something which Dr. Ambedkar has brought. He has written to his friend, Francie, to send him the abstract of the directive principle from the Ireland Constitution. And directive principle is what? It is not forcible in the court of law, but directive principle gives the directive to the state to develop policies. A certain policy is a manner such that it lead to improvement of the well-being of the people, and particularly social justice for scheduled castes. So there is no time. Three aspects which convey the transformative constitutionalism, which is not a part of British constitutionalism, which Dr. Ambedkar brought, was banning of untouchability, reservation policy, and directive principle, which Justice Chandrachud has rightly pointed out. But this is my point, which I mentioned in my comment on Chief Justice of India also, that what is contained in the Constitution is not the Constitution of Dr. Ambedkar. And that we must understand. We shower flower and we shower everything on Ambedkar, his role in constitution, without realizing that the present constitution is partly reflect his view and not totally. Now you must remember that Indian constitution developed in 1950 is a consensus developed in the Constitutional Assembly on behalf of the people. Anil has rightly pointed out, constitution is a view of the people at given point of time. But Ambedkar helped as a chairman of the drafting committee with his scholarship to develop consensus. And whenever there is disagreement, he brought his scholarship. And there he used again pragmatism. To the extent possible, he pushed his view in the constitution in favor of marginalized group in terms of reservation policy, banning untouchability and directive principle. But he couldn't do whole of it. Now, if that is the question, what is Ambedkar's constitution in his entirety? Ambedkar's constitution is given in 2 books, which he brought out, and which we never talk and which we never discuss, because they are difficult and we have no desire to do that. When the constitution it was decided that the constitution will be made, 4 to 5 parties submitted their draft constitution. Congress gave the constitution, Communist Party gave the draft constitution, Swatantra Party gave the constitutions, Hindu Mahasabha gave their constitution, Shama Prasad Mukherjee. Everybody submitted the draft of the constitution to the Constitutional Assembly that the constitution should be according to this principle. Ambedkar, on behalf of the Scheduled Caste Federation, gave a draft of the constitution of his vision in state and minorities in 1947. Before that, he has dealt the issue of minorities, communal deadlock, and way to solve it. But that also he incorporated in state and minority. So what is the constitution of Dr. Ambedkar? Emancipatory constitution of Dr. Ambedkar in state and minority. To what extent 1950 constitution in line with that? How does it differ? What are the aspects of Dr. Ambedkar which are not accepted by the Constitutional Assembly, and that is why we are landed into trouble on both constitution, on the idea of nation and constitution, and on democracy. Again, in 5 to 6 minutes, I will tell that Dr. Ambedkar raised objections, serious objection on the British type of constitutionalism. He said the British type of constitutionalism laid down the fundamental right and the political structure. It doesn't define the economic structure. Because economic structure will be decided by whom? Economic structure and will be decided by the legislature through policies. Isn't it? That is what it happened today. Political structure in terms of political democracy is well defined. Fundamental rights are well defined. But economic structure is not defined. That is left to the legislature to define what economic policy you should take and you should not take. Dr. Ambedkar said this is not correct. You have to also lay down the economic structure in the constitution as a law. And why he suggested that? He recommended state socialism as an economy to make a part of the Indian constitution. And he justifies why we should have socialism as a part of the law of the constitution. The reason was, he said that the ultimate goal is liberty, fundamental right. But if you guarantee liberty, but if you have economic structures which undermine your liberty, what is the use of having liberty? What is the use of having equality if your economic structure doesn't provide inequality? Yes, many have pointed out, Kanchaile has pointed out, taking over of the government by the corporate sector. So Ambedkar was right. So what he said, that economic structure which allow those people to enjoy equity and liberty, that economic structure should be a part of the constitution. But Nehru was shaking, Rajendra Prasad was shaking, and Patel was shaking when they found this memorandum of Ambedkar. What is Ambedkar saying, that how do we include economic structure? And he conveyed to him that no, rest is fine, but not this. Here is a denial of reformatory constitutionalism in terms of including economic structure in the constitution, which is not accepted by the constitution. So this is the first limitation of the 1950 constitution, and Ambedkar's thoughts not being included. Ambedkar emancipatory constitutionalism would like not only fundamental right, not only political structure, but also the economic structure as a part of the constitution. Therefore, the term that he has used is very important. Sridhar Krishnamurti will know it. Constitutional state socialism, not only state socialism. Constitutional state socialism, make the economic structure part of the constitution. This is one. And what has happened is this is now we know what is being happening. I'll come to that at the end. The last point is that he also suggested, besides state socialism, the reform British parliamentary democracy. He objected to the British parliamentary democracy, its adoption as it is. Because he said that the British parliamentary system, British political party system will not succeed in India. The reason he has given is the following, and which we should understand, which has exactly come true. And that he described first in communal deadlock and way to solve it, and then included in the state and minority. What are his argument? Very briefly. His argument was that in a British parliamentary democracy, there are political parties. The political party which get the maximum vote is a majority party, constitute they are majority in legislature, they form the executive and run the government. Now, what is parliamentary majority? Parliamentary majority, which Dr. Ambedkar defined, is the majority which come on the basis of policies. Today, there is an election. We have several parties. They have their manifesto, which Kancha has presented to you. And this manifesto is presented before the people. And people, if like the manifesto and solution given by some people, they will vote them. So political majority which comes to the power is a majority which is based on the policies and the programs. Ambedkar argued that no, in India, there can't be a political majority. Given that there is a diversity, religion, caste, ethnicity, gender, the political majority will be replaced by the communal majority, based on religion, based on caste, based on ethnicity. So you cannot adopt the British idea of the political majority. And therefore, he suggests an alternative. Again, I don't have a time. He suggests an alternative in communal deadlock, and even in state and minority, he suggested reform political democracy for Indian situation. And what is that? He suggested that you have 70% of Hindus and rest of minority, reduce the seat of the Hindus in the legislature and distribute it to the minorities on certain principles. Those principles are that those minority which are educationally, economically, and politically backward, give them more seat. So what he suggested was that reduce the number of the majority, Hindu majority, and increase minority in a manner such that you don't reduce Hindu in minority, but in a manner such that there is a relative majority. This is the concept that he developed. Relative majority or balanced majority. And there are table after table in the state and minorities and the communal deadlock. Read them, how he has reduced this percentage. So that there is no influence, overwhelming influence of a Hindu majority. Second principle he suggested is executive. Executive is powerful. Legislature only form laws, but it is the executive which implement through cabinet and the minister. There he said if the legislature is communal, executive will be communal. So if you make the legislature secular in some form, you have to make executive also. So he made a change. There's a lot of discussion. I won't want to go into this, but I want to make only his remedy. He suggested the principle of confidence. What is principle of confidence? Principle of confidence is that the majority party which form the government, people should have a faith in them, whichever political party they are. And for that purpose, he has suggested three solutions. One, the prime minister from the majority party will be elected by the entire house and not by the majority party. Number one. The cabinet minister will be elected by the entire house, not by the majority party. And third, that the minister of the minority party will be elected by each of the minority. So that you have the prime minister, you have the cabinet minister, and you have the minority minister who have confidence of the house, which means the confidence of the people. He was trying to make reform. And third principle was rule of unanimity. He said the rule of majority is not a sacrosanct rule. It was not even in the British Constitution. It came much later. The majority rule came 100 years after, even in British Constitution, British democracy. So he suggested that the majority should rule not be sacrosanct, 49-51. He gave the example of League of Nations, where there has to be unanimity. Now, today's Security Council, if China say no, you can't take decision. So rule of unanimity, but then he said that at least on crucial matter related to minority, at least 2/3 majority should be there. So the principle of balanced representation, principle of confidence, and principle of unanimous rule were three principles through which he reformed the working of the parliamentary democracy in India and suggested the model again, Congress and Constitutional Assembly in tandem, because this was too radical. Now, therefore, let me summarize for you 2 points that yes, Ambedkar brought reformatory constitutionalism in Indian Constitution. He provides enough scope, considerable scope for the judges to give decisions which are in favor of social justice and equality. Justice Gavai also in Columbia University, he went and gave a lecture in Columbia University. He also says that Constitution has that element whereby the judges can make it bring social justice. And that is because of Dr. Ambedkar's contribution. But yet, the entire suggestion of Dr. Ambedkar are not a part of Indian Constitution. Two predictions that Ambedkar has suggested, that unless you society accept this principle of equality and fraternity, democracy will not be successful, nation will not be successful. Sudhir Krishna Swami has made a reference to him. Anil has also made a reference to him. But there has to be effort. Therefore, he brought Buddhism. That you change the values and attitude of the people in favor of Constitution. That has not exactly happened. What has happened is exactly the opposite. And therefore, gradually, the nation has been converted from a secular nation, which is the principle of preamble, into a religion-based theocratic state, gradually. This was the prediction of Dr. Ambedkar in November 25, 49 lecture, that I am very scared that what will happen to this nation. And this precisely that is what has happened within 75 years. In 1944, in Madras, he gave a lecture, and there he predicted this. And his prediction on communal democracy are very clear. Now you see, all political parties are based on religion. Caste is open. We don't feel ashamed of naming the caste, deciding the candidate. But beside caste, at least we try to bring under control. There are people, ideologies, which openly want to bring a caste in election and say openly, Kanshiram another. Congress, internally they do it, but they don't defend that the caste should be the part of the electoral campaign. No. You say principles will decide elections. Although in practice you use the caste in the election, but more than caste, now religion has come. So both danger and warning issued by Dr. Ambedkar about the nation becoming a religious state and the political democracy becoming a communal democracy based on religion have come true, because they have not listened to him at all. And that is why in anger, he said, I burn this constitution, one of the students. That was really in anger. But you must also see his interview with British BBC, very recent clip on the YouTube. The BBC person asked him, what is the success of political democracy? He said, there are no chances of success. How soon? He said, pretty soon. And 75 years is pretty soon. I think Ambedkar has to be studied. Sloganing and emotional thing should be reduced. Thank you very much. Sorry, I have taken more time. So we take another 10 minutes. We have a time. Okay. You take your question and then go. If there are questions to Sudhir Krishna Swami, please answer. So he will answer and he will go then. Kanchaila is with us, another speaker is with us.
Good morning, sir. Can I ask a question? Sir, the I would like the ISEC organization for arranging this event. This event has been very thought-provoking. The differences of perspective and perception.
Please,
is-
you don't give the comment.
Okay.
If you have a question for Krishna Swami, because he has to go,
Okay.
so if you have a question, ask him.
Okay, sir. The question is to Krishnamurti, sir. Sir, if there is an alternative and systematic, injustice which promotes social equality, is there any mechanism because which Ambedkar has adopted? Were there any other options that you could have looked into? Because in the perspective of social equality, Ambedkar had a upper hand, but are there any alternate mechanism, systematic, to address systematic injustice? Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir.
Let me just use the opportunity to try and respond. I don't know that I have a sharp response, but I want to reflect on what Professor Thorat also added and then try and respond to this. There are two ways of responding to the crisis of political democracy. The first is to deal with questions of representation, that you somehow alter the formula by which representation and decision making is organized. Now, while Dr. Ambedkar had developed some mechanisms which we would today in contemporary political theory call consociational mechanisms to try and ensure that discrete groups consent would be secured before any decision would be taken, as well as a very convoluted mechanism on ministerial responsibility, which I see as interesting in political terms, but very difficult. I can see of no institutional example anywhere in the world where such a model of ministerial responsibility is in place. So one way of dealing with this problem is to deal with the problem as a problem of representation. You tweak all the formulas of representation and then secure an outcome. And Dr. Ambedkar in some early work adopted that view. He might have been sympathetic to that view even in constitution making, but there's no record either in the subcommittee processes or in the Constituent Assembly of him advancing this view. There's no record. So he's not put this view forward in that period. But the other way is to deal with it structurally. And this is what I want to say by way of response. So Dr. Ambedkar had two kinds of responses to the problem of inequality. One kind of response is to deal with representation. So, for example, the entire reservation engine, he clearly articulates, is not a structural solution. It is only a representation problem solution. But then the structural inequalities and structural discriminations, you can only respond to at the mass scale of policy. And part 4 of the Constitution responds to that problem of putting in place anti-hierarchy principles across the economy, the society, and including the family. So everywhere that you can see on the question of gender, on the question of economy, on the question of social arrangements. So he always worked along both vectors. Think structurally, think representationally. The idea that every problem is a representational problem, I think, is a mistake. That's the only thing that I would say to Professor Thorat. If we transform all the problems of politics to be only a problem of finding the right representational tool, we will lose. The power of the idea of one person, one vote and direct representation is extremely powerful and compelling. The idea that we can somehow just tweak that formula every time and that we will develop mass political consensus around it, I think is an idea that in some kind of benign universe that is possible. In real politics, it is very difficult to achieve. If we don't collapse all political problems as representational problems, then we can look at where is that space for structural politics. That's how I would respond to that question. And I will also excuse myself at that only because I have a class waiting.
Anybody again question for Krishna Swami? Yes. Brief, please brief. You don't want to take? Yeah, what? Yeah, Indira, not Indira. Yeah, so Leela. Huh? Kala Sridhar. Yeah, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no, sorry, sir. My question was not for Professor Krishnaswamy. Sorry, I
Oh,
have a question,
okay,
but not for him. Sorry.
anybody now?
Sir, I have another question.
Yes, please go ahead now.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm very, very happy to be participating and learning from this panel discussion on constitution and democracy. And my question is to Professor Shepherd. He made this very interesting observation that industrialization is kind of skewed and limited to some industrialists from Gujarat, Bombay, and also in Bangalore, and also to certain castes. I mean, I do understand the underlying principles, directive principles of state policy of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And I would like to make one point, which is that the Constitution was drafted in a very, very different milieu for the country. When we were largely rural, agricultural, a lot of people were poor and lot of inequality. And now we have become more urban, and incomes have risen more, definitely a little bit more equal. And I definitely appreciated Professor Thorat's point regarding the economic structure, how Dr. Ambedkar requested for that, and that could not be changed. But given the new milieu, the 1991 economic reforms, because we were a sovereign socialist democratic republic then, but now we continue to be that and superimposed on a capitalist market-based kind of system fueled by the 1991 economic reforms. So, I mean, my simple question is whether there is any specific provision in the Constitution to kind of amend the provision pertaining to the spatial distribution of industrialization as such. I mean, I'm not a constitutional expert, so I would really appreciate a response. Thank you.
Yeah, Kancha.
Okay, I don't think any constitution in the world made a provision for equitable distributive developmental process of capital. Now, what the social structure of India shows us is that, recently I was looking at this whole process. How is it that out of 100 top industrial monopoly houses, 90% of them are from Gujarat, Bombay region. And then the whole question of spiritualization of capital is also happening from that side. From the Eastern India, where the British started its rule, maybe, communism has developed more and more in that region, and also in Kerala region and other parts. But that kind of capital has not developed. Perhaps if it were to develop in that area, the secularization of capital perhaps would have been much better. So my fundamental question is, uh, Professor Thorat has been talking about Ambedkar's evolution as a constitutional maker is one problem. But today, the concern is, what is the way in which this constitution should be protected? There is a big debate going on. There are voices which say that this should be changed completely. There are voices which say, no, this has to be defended, protected at the cost of, several lives, even if it means. Now, that is where I am concerned about the role of capital. If the capital gets into the spiritual domain, for whatever the region it is, then the electoral processes get completely derailed. Was it not true that earlier it was there? It was, but not to this extent. So that is where I think Indian economists have to look at not merely what is happening in RBI, what was the kind of growth data that they were. So what is the nature of capital that we have today, and what is the influence of spirituality on capital? That is my concern.
Anybody has a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sir, okay.
yeah, please.
Online?
Is there a question there, Kamath? No, message or question. No, if there is a question, please read out. That's simple, na?
Doubt.
Yeah.
The,
No, Kamath knows, na, very close.
yeah, you can read.
So in
Grade
the meantime, I just wanted to make one additional point, sir. I think Dr. Ambedkar, I think I'm aware of his view that he thought industrialization is the best solution to the agricultural problems of India. So that is the milieu in which I wanted to know this. But thank you very much for your response.
Yes,
Professor.
Kamath.
The grade inequality created by the Brahminical system, how to redress such issues in the present scenario, and how to bring social democracy.
You want to, you want to? You refer.
I think I refer to social democracy, and Ambedkar had also given solutions to that in his annihilation of caste. I think we have to read, as Professor Thora has rightly said, Dr. Ambedkar should be read and read seriously now. Thank you.
Yes, anybody? Yeah, yeah, read out.
We see that Modi ji's guarantee as a failure of Ambedkar guarantee or Gandhi guarantee.
No, we avoid the issues on election because there are election code. Yeah, please. Yeah, now you can, and then after.
Sir, question to Thorat, sir. With Ambedkar's writing and legacy, sir, how it can further strengthen caste-based discrimination, social inequalities, and human rights violations from hereafter? Because we
Fur-
discussed all about.
Further strengthen caste-based discrimination?
No, sir. To reduce the caste-based discrimination and strengthen the those remedies, sir. And with the social inequalities, how it can be addressed? Because we have already discussed with the writings and what they have done. What hereafter now, sir? That is the question.
See, I will suggest you, instead of I will answer that question. On the remedies, the last word of Dr. Ambedkar is state and minorities. Last word. The additional thing is Buddhism, converted to Buddhism. That is one of the solutions. But state and minority, in my view, include the entire wisdom of Dr. Ambedkar throughout his life in state and minority. And we repeat the question, we repeat the answers without referring to that. Dr. Ambedkar, the title is like that. Remedies. He suggested two remedies. One is remedies against economic exploitation. And these remedies against economic exploitation was for ensuring fundamental right to the people. He took an argument, there is a long discussion there, that in an economy which is based on private ownership will not ensure liberty because of inequalities and the control of the corporate sector. That Ambedkar already predicted, that we are talking about, and Katja Alaya referring to. He referred that in state and minority. How in an economy which is based on the private ownership of resources, take control of the legislature and interest the legislature for their interest. That hypothesis he already laid down. That is what has come true. But we don't go back to Ambedkar. We develop our own circle. That is one. That he suggested socialism, nationalization of industry, nationalization of agriculture, nationalization of education, public health, and insurance. Rest of the sector, he says, small sector can be in a public sector. And there are examples in Latin America where there is in the constitution, socialism has been accepted as a part of the constitution. Some socialistic economy, which Sudhir Krishna Sapi is saying is not correct. There are countries which are democratic socialist country where there is a provision in the constitution. Sweden has a provision in the constitution of economic structure which is dominated by the publics. That is one thing. Please read that. The second remedy is against social discrimination. Remedy against social discrimination is threefold, twofold. One, the representation of minorities and the social group which face discrimination. Because even if you guarantee them right, they will not be able to do because others discriminate against them on the basis of caste. So what is the alternative? There are two alternatives. One, the structure which is result into discrimination, that structure should be changed. And therefore he suggested Buddhism where values and norms can be changed in favor of equality and liberty, but that will take time. Therefore he suggested that one of the impact of discrimination is less representation of the scheduled caste and others in legislature, in job, in education institution. Therefore, he suggested representation through reservation. Again, Sudhir Krishnamurti is incorrect, saying that over-emphasizing on representation without addressing the issue of structural is not correct. No, you require representation because there are structural problems. You cannot delink. There is a discrimination in the caste structure, therefore you require reservation because you are not given due share. So structure and representation in job, legislature, in education institution, in housing is necessary because your structure is discriminatory. So you have to link them. So these are the solution. Please read that. The important point is that the suggestion made by Ambedkar are correct, but in the present reality, there is no question of socialism. There is no question of state being more powerful. In fact, there is a complete withdrawal of the state now from economic structure, privatization of education, privatization of health services, giving control to the corporate sector. In that context, now what we have to do is we have to find out the middle path. You cannot have socialism and nationalization, but you have to suggest policies which will at least give access to the poor section. And the Europe has found, Europe has developed that. After Marx, they developed concept of democratic socialism, but then come down and then you have market socialism and several other concepts came. But all concept focus is on how to give access to the poor and discriminated.
So this was a very interesting, interesting point. So as I understand from all the speakers, there's basically a contestation, the contestation between a political democracy vis-a-vis which is transitioning towards the communal, democracy. So there is a problem with respect to how we implement the constitution and also how we interpret the constitution. So these are the two things which is very realistically it's coming out. So the point is based on very similar to the question of Dr. Kala. Should we revisit the constitution? Is there a time now where the time has come where we need to really revisit the constitution? How relevant are is the provisions and the constitution itself, and then the limitations, like whatever the constitution has certain inherent limitations. That's how we are trying to now, transition towards what you refer to as a plutocracy or maybe authoritarian, electoral authoritarian majority government. So how do we fill up this gap? There is a gap basically. Should we revisit, now the time has come to revisit the constitution itself?
No, my feeling is, though as Thorat was saying that Ambedkar did not visualize two-party system in India. And he said that would be not workable in India given the population and the size of the country. But India certainly in future leads towards two-party system. I think that the regional parties may not survive for long. Regional parties emerged because of the failure of the then dominant one-party system where the Shudra, Dalit, Adivasi forces were completely undermined. And after Mandal, emergence of regional parties happened. Now, what happened after 2000 and thereafter is that system will go into a two-party national party system. Now, the entire sustenance of very structure of democracy, in my view, remains at least keeping the present constitution as it stands, however time it was amended. Earlier also it was amended before BJP came to power, so 120 times or so. Now there are amendments coming, one after the other. But the ideological framework of amendments has a different connotation. Therefore, the education sector plays a key role in sustaining this constitution. In my view, the biggest privatized sector today is education. From primary education to monopoly companies starting schools, universities, and with Western syllabus English. So that is the reason why I have been consistently demanding that deprivatization of school education and complete English medium in state government and central government sectors. Then equality of knowledge base, then protection of the constitution is possible. Even the controlling of the capital, present monopoly capital of certain castes, will be decentralized if more and more Dalit, Adivasi, Shudra, OBCs come into English medium education across the country. Numbers and global spread will increase. And that we have to fight. Nobody is asking, unfortunately, about deprivatization of school education and common English medium. And we all want our children to be English educated, but not farmers, labor, tribals. This is a tragedy.
Okay, I think we should stop now. There are questions online, but I think we have to close down now. I'll ask Krishna Raj to end the vote of thanks here. Tirupati.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to convey a formal vote of thanks in a very short time. Beginning with from the Institute of Isaac. I'm grateful to thank for the Isaac to conducting this first time as a Ambedkar birth anniversary in our effort. Also, I'm behalf of SAC, I'm thanking with this, and our panelists given a very pro thoughts for us to think over about and carry about our Ambedkar thoughts and in terms of political, social, and economic equality justice. So with this, for the audiences, your contribution of participation is very eminent. It's very important for us to take over the new thoughts of through your questions. So hereafter, herewith, I'm just ending vote of thanks. Thank you so much for our chair also. Thank you.